Good evening, welcome to Ben TV. My name is Steve Pereira and you're watching Quedia, the show where we explore all things art, culture and media. This evening we're talking to Bill about publications. In Melbourne, Bill Calder, some of you may recognize, is a Melbourne icon, publishing icon. He worked on Brother Sister in the 90s and more recently B News. Bill has recently produced a book called Pink Ink, which features this fabulous cover of Queen Victoria with a pink nose, and that's worth the price of admission in itself. Welcome to Ben TV, Bill.
Thank you, Steve.
We're talking about the publications, and we're talking about my favourite topic, male nudes.
Yes, well, the male nude publications, they emerged out of a anti-censorship push that had been going on in the 60s. Prior to this period, Australia had very strict censorship laws. You couldn't portray anything remotely that looked gay. And nudity was very much restricted. And
did that include things like those physique magazines and...
Physique magazines were legal, but they were very tenuous. They clearly were homoerotic, but they had to tread a very careful line. So they attached themselves to the very laudable activity of bodybuilding. And so this was a very manly activity and a healthy activity. And
that health related with as well with naturalist magazines like H&E and those magazines that also featured full frontal male nudity.
Yes, most of the physique magazines wouldn't show genitals.
Oh, right, okay.
But you could have a very skimpy bathing suit on a man in those magazines, and they were the de facto porn of the time. But with the sort of changing attitudes and a kind of more liberationist approach that was occurring in the 70s, you then had a new strand of publication that came out that was clearly gay male nude and identified as such. And again, this was because of the less sensorial environment that we had at the time.
So what was the distribution channels then at that time? Could you sell them in a regular news agency?
You could sell them in news agencies to some extent. This was a little bit later. At first they were mainly distributed through mail order and through the sex shops, which had also started to appear.
The plain brown envelope?
The plain brown envelope phenomenon, yeah. And in fact the very first one was a Sydney man, John Baker. He started what was his magazine was William and John, named after his lover and himself at the time. It didn't last very long, that one. He was 21 when he started it. But it was just this was 1972, just as the laws were changing. He still ran into a lot of trouble with censors and ended up with about 56 charges of breaking those laws against him and suffering fines and struggled quite a bit.
So did these male nude magazines or publications exist simultaneously with the liberationists?
Or? Yes, there was the political activists at the time in the 70s, and they didn't approve at all of these. So this was kind of a very early split within the gay and lesbian community. There was a feminist argument against this portrayal of male nudes generally, and the political liberationists took a similar line of opposing them. So it was kind of two very different streams of media occurring there in the 70s. And look, they established themselves, and particularly by the mid-70s when these laws sort of got bedded down, and they introduced a category called the restricted publication, which was really the brown paper bag syndrome that became legal in that environment.
So could Australians order stuff from overseas?
No. There was censorship on material coming in. I mean, America did produce some of these magazines before 1970, and they would occasionally appear in Australia, but usually someone brought them in their suitcase who'd been travelling. People may have got them through the post, but they ran the risk, and they'd suffer fines or worse. I mean, generally it was illegal to be gay, and you'd be outing yourself if you ordered one in through the mail.
So what were the most popular male nude magazines at the time?
Look, the most successful one was one that was called Gay. It appeared, initially it was called Butch, and then changed, and including its name, and became Gay by about 1975, and it kept going right through into the 90s. So it was very long running. It became a formula of nudes and classifieds and advertisements for sex aids. The only reason it stopped really was videos took over. Videos kind of wiped out the print market, and when videos in turn got wiped out by the internet.
That would have been the mid-80s.
The mid-80s, yeah.
So was there any equivalent lesbian?
There was, yep.
Yeah.
Again, the lesbian media was very strongly feminist right through the 70s and didn't approve.
But what about feminist erotica?
Well, there was kind of a view that sex had been used by men to oppress women, and sex should become an equal, non-penetrative even experience. So it became quite politically defined how to have sex, but the Wicked Women, the publishers of Wicked Women, just thought this took all the fun out of sex, and so they rebelled entirely against these sort of ideas of nice, equal, friendly sex, and just wanted raunchy, wild sex.
Do we have any? Sorry, we're running out of time again. Do you have any of these remnants of these magazines still around now?
They're all there. The Australian Lesbian Gay Archives has almost a complete set of all these magazines, which is a tremendous resource.
But we don't have them in popular circulation, though.
Wicked Women has stopped publication. That's true.
Fascinating. Naked men and naked women.
An excellent formula.
We were progressing. Thank you, Bill. It's a fascinating discussion about male nudes and female nudes. You've been watching Bents TV. I'm Steve Pereira. We've been talking to Bill Calder, publishing icon from Melbourne. Thank you for watching. Good night.